The door opened and Carson came in, holding a silver tray with drinks and biscuits. Steve, grateful for the diversion, beamed with relief at the arrival. "Thank you, Carson," said Knills, clapping his hands. "The perfect antidote for uncomfortable silences. Tea." Carson did not respond as he poured the hot drinks into pearl-white cups, hovered over the sugar bowl, and gave Steve a questioning look. "Two," said Steve, aware his voice sounded strained. If Carson noticed, he gave no sign, and heaped in the required amount of sweetener, and gave the tea a brisk stir before handing it over. Knills' hands shook when he took his own, immediately blowing over the steaming liquid with pale, purple lips. He repeated this process without taking a mouthful. "My wife," said Knills without preamble, "has been gone for several years now, Mr. Brunt." Carson coughed, went to move away. "Before Carson's time, of course." The old man smiled at his servant. "Wouldn't have happened on your watch, eh?" "I doubt it." "One of the reasons I hired Carson," continued Knills, gently putting the untouched tea on the floor. He again stared into the fire. "The night they came." A silence fell over them, with Steve looking from one to the other. Knills lost in his thoughts, Carson rooted to the spot, face impassive and hard. "You shouldn't talk about it," uttered Carson. "No, but how can I not?" A tremendous pop made everyone jump, and a large piece of burning wood sprang from the depths of the fire and settled on the carpet. Carson moved with athletic speed, dampening down the smoldering ember with his shoe. He reached out for the brush and shovel beside the fireplace. "Don't bother," said Knills, his voice small and disinterested. "Take away these things, would you?" Carson paused, considered the black burn mark on the carpet, pulled across the fire guard, and gathered the teacups. He left without a word. Steve still held a half-eaten biscuit in his hand. Time to leave, he thought, and made as if to stand up. "They came one June night," said Knills quietly. "I remember I wasn't feeling too well. One of those summer colds, and I had gone to bed earlier than usual. Melanie, my wife, remained down here pottering around, as was her wont." Steve edged his hand, holding the biscuit toward his trouser pocket, and then became aware of Knills staring straight at him. He stopped and forced an awkward smile. "I'm not sure what time she came to bed, but something woke me. I groped for the bedside clock and remember the illuminated dial reading 3:17. You may think it strange how I recall such a seemingly insignificant detail, but my mind is etched with the memory, you see. It will never fade. 3:17, so you... A man stood at the front of the bed. I could see his outline quite clearly, even without my spectacles. My stomach turned to water. I tried to move, but I could not. Fear, Mr. Brunt. Fear froze every sinew. He stepped closer, and I realized there were two others behind him, big men, shadowy shapes lurking in the darkness. The first man put his hand around my mouth and held a gun to my head. My wife remained asleep, but then he shook his head. He said he wanted the combination to my safe. How any of them knew I had a safe, I have no idea. Perhaps Reynolds, my previous servant. I never liked him, Mr. Brunt. In the days before the break-in, I remember having to talk to him quite forcibly about his lack of attention to detail. The garden appeared neglected, the house dirty, running repairs ignored. I hate such disrespect, Mr. Brunt. To be so inconsiderate of another person's belongings, especially things held dear, riles me more than most anything. I paid him well, gave him his own apartment, use of a car, as I do with Carson. But whereas Carson is hard-working and loyal, Reynolds was an idle good-for-nothing. I decided to bring him down a peg or two. So I stood him there. He pointed a withered finger towards the writing desk. And I scolded him, Mr. Brunt, as a teacher might his pupil. By the look on his face, his indignation was plain to see. You think he told these men about your safe? It's a possibility, yes.